Welcome to Crimes Beyond Borders, where we'll bring you the most thrilling true crime stories every single day. If you're fascinated by mystery, intrigue, and the darker side of human nature, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us as we unravel the most shocking and perplexing criminal cases from around the world. The story is about to begin after this intro.
From city streets to far-off lands, mystery slipping through our hands. Crimes beyond borders they speak, voices strong but words are meek. Every story leaves a mark, whispers softly in the dark.
Our stories at first are made for ourselves, to comfort us, to help us sleep, and to learn. Along the way, they become a part of our journey, teaching us English and fueling our passion for true crime. So, listen carefully, and if you're about to sleep, close your eyes. Let's begin.
The Edge of Silence. The city was a sprawling expanse of forgotten corners and perpetual motion, where the shadows of skyscrapers intertwined with the dim glow of neon signs. Elias knew its heartbeat, the ebb and flow of people who filled its streets, each of them moving with purpose or aimless distraction. It was a symphony he had learned to decipher, listening for the pauses, the moments when the world seemed to hold its breath. Those were the moments he lived for, moments when he felt more than an observer, more than the invisible man slipping through the cracks. For years, Elias had honed his skill of blending into the scenery. His job at the university library suited him perfectly, offering a semblance of normalcy. The staff saw him as a peculiar, but harmless man, the kind who spoke softly and lingered at his desk long after hours, surrounded by books so old their spines seemed to whisper secrets. But the real Elias, the one who moved like a shadow and thrived on the precision of planning, was always watching, always waiting. The discovery of Claire. It began with Claire, as most obsessions do, with a chance encounter that carved itself into his mind. She was a graduate student in cognitive neuroscience, deeply invested in unraveling the mysteries of the human brain. Elias first noticed her during a late night in the library, hunched over an open textbook with diagrams of neurons and circuits spread out before her. The desk lamp cast a warm, focused light that made her appear ethereal, as though she were more a creature of thought than flesh. Claire was deliberate in all she did. She moved like someone who knew how to occupy space, her fingers tapping gently on the wooden desk when she was lost in thought. Elias watched her from behind the rows of books, each of her gestures imprinting itself on his mind. What began as curiosity bloomed into something more complex, a gnawing need to understand what lay beneath that calm, studious exterior. He started to learn her routine, morning runs along the river, afternoons spent in the lab, and late evenings at a cafe nestled between a florist and an old record store. She liked chamomile tea and classical music, pieces that matched the tempo of rain tapping against glass. Each detail Elias discovered felt like a thread pulled from an intricate tapestry, feeding the compulsion that coiled within him like a living thing. The creation of a plan. His apartment became a shrine to Claire's existence. The sterile white walls turned into a mosaic of maps, photographs, and scribbled notes. A red string connected the locations she frequented, forming a web that led to her small apartment in a building with peeling paint and wrought iron balconies. Elias knew every detail, from the rickety stairs that groaned underfoot to the way the hallway light flickered, as if hesitant to stay lit. But observation wasn't enough. Elias needed to create the perfect scenario, one where he could wield control over every second, orchestrating the scene like a conductor at the climax of a symphony. He chose an abandoned theater on the city's edge, a once glorious space now reduced to silence and decay. The velvet seats were moth-eaten, and the grand chandelier hung like a skeletal hand from the cracked ceiling. It was a place where stories had once been told, and Elias intended to tell another. Over the next few weeks, he visited the theater, stepping through layers of dust and shattered glass, listening to the way sound echoed off the walls. He marked where the moonlight spilled through broken windows and set up lanterns to illuminate the stage just enough to cast long, twisting shadows. He bolted a chair to the center of the wooden floor, checking and rechecking the strength of the restraints. This was not a place of chaos, this was a place of deliberate creation. The night of the symphony. The night was colder than usual, the city wrapped in a biting wind that carried whispers of rain. Elias walked with purpose, dressed in dark clothes that hugged his frame, gloves snug on his hands, the familiar weight of the knife pressing against his hip. He waited near the cafe, watching from a doorway as Claire sat inside, her eyes skimming over notes, the steam from her cup curling into the air like a ghost. At 11:27 p.m., she gathered her things and stepped into the night. The streets were mostly empty, the rain starting to fall in earnest, pattering on rooftops and splashing against the pavement. Elias followed her, keeping to the edges where the streetlights struggled to reach. When she crossed into the narrow alley near her building, he moved. The sound of his footsteps was swallowed by the rain, and before Claire could react, his arm was around her waist, the cloth soaked in chloroform pressed against her mouth and nose. Her eyes went wide, the shock giving way to a struggle as she clawed at his arm, but he held firm. The scent of rain and metal filled the air as her movements slowed, her body slumping against him. Elias felt his heartbeat steady, the anticipation coiling tighter. He carried her to a waiting car parked 2 streets down, laying her in the back seat before driving toward the theater. The stage is set. The theater was dark when they arrived, the only sounds the creak of old floorboards and the soft whistle of wind through broken panes. Elias placed Claire in the chair at the center of the stage, securing her wrists and ankles with nylon ties. He stepped back, the knife cold in his hand, the light from the lanterns casting twisted shadows across her unconscious form. It took minutes for her to wake, eyes blinking against the dim light, confusion giving way to terror, as she registered the ropes and the man standing before her. Elias watched her, studying every flicker of emotion, as if it were part of a language only he could translate. She looked up at him, the realization settling into her features like a stone sinking into water. "Why are you doing this?" Her voice trembled, not yet broken. Elias didn't answer, not with words. He moved closer, the knife glinting as he traced the air above her skin. It was a tool, an extension of his will, not meant for rage, but for understanding, for carving through the pretense that people wrapped around themselves. Claire's breathing quickened, her chest rising and falling as she strained against the binds, the light catching the sheen of sweat on her brow. "I know you," she whispered, eyes narrowing as if trying to pull him from the recesses of her memory. The statement was unexpected, a small crack in the symphony he'd composed. His fingers twitched, and the knife dipped for a moment before he steadied it. "Do you?" The question left his lips before he could stop it, a slip that shattered the silence he so carefully maintained. "I've seen you," she continued, voice firmer now, defiance sparking like a flame. "You think this is control, but it's not." The words reverberated through the theater, echoing in the emptiness until they struck something deep within Elias, something he hadn't accounted for. His vision wavered, the sharp lines of the stage and the seats blurring as if he was staring through water. The knife lowered as his mind raced, grasping for the composure that had defined him for so long. But it was gone, unraveling thread by thread under the weight of her stare. The collapse. In that moment, the theater seemed to shrink, the lanterns casting grotesque shapes that bent and twisted like mocking specters. The control Elias had clung to so tightly cracked, the silence no longer his to command, but an oppressive force that pushed back, suffocating him. Claire's breathing steadied, her eyes watching him not with fear, but with pity. It was a look that pierced deeper than any blade, exposing the void he had kept hidden even from himself. He stepped back, the knife slipping from his grasp and clattering to the floor with a sound that seemed to shatter the walls around him. The theater was no longer a place of power, but a prison, echoing with the truth he had refused to see. Without a word, he turned and fled, the creak of the stage and the rush of cold air following him as he burst through the door into the rain-soaked night. The city swallowed him, the roar of distant traffic and the hiss of rain blending into a cacophony that drowned out everything else. He ran until his legs burned, until his chest heaved with the effort of drawing breath. When he finally stopped, leaning against a brick wall slick with rain, the realization hit him like a blow. The perfection he had sought, the control he had believed unshakable, was an illusion shattered by a single moment of defiance. The aftermath. Claire was found in the early hours of the morning, still tied to the chair, shaken but unharmed. The theater, once forgotten, became the focus of the city's attention, its decay illuminated by flashing lights and the murmurs of onlookers. The police scoured it for evidence, but Elias had already slipped away, a shadow once more. The silence that had been his solace became a torment, each moment of quiet and accusation. He moved through the city like a ghost, haunted not by the act itself, but by what it revealed. He was no longer the master of the moments between breath and silence, he was a prisoner of them. Days turned into weeks, and the city continued to pulse, unaware of the man who lingered at its edges, eyes fixed on the people who moved through it with oblivious purpose. The labyrinth he once navigated with ease now twisted inside him, a maze of echoes and memories he could never escape. And as the city roared back to life, Elias understood that the control he had cherished had been nothing more than a fragile illusion, one shattered by a single, unyielding truth. He was not the conductor of his symphony, but an instrument played by it, echoing in a silence that no longer belonged to him.
The story has come to an end, but stay relaxed. If you feel yourself drifting off to sleep, just let the video play and enjoy the soothing music in the background. Let it guide you gently into rest. We'll be here, bringing you more stories every night. Sleep well, and see you tomorrow at 8 p.m.
Dimly glow, secrets hidden where few will go. In the half-light, truth begins to show. Unseen forces pull and tow. Windows shut, curtains drawn tight. Lonely figures melt in the night. Echoes fade out of sight. Moonlight bathes the world in fright. Ticking clocks, relentless sound. Time slips when danger's around. In the shadows, lost and found. Haunting silence so profound. Flickering lamps dimly glow. Secrets hidden where few will go. In the half-light, truth begins to show. Unseen forces pull and tow. Windows shut, curtains drawn tight. Lonely figures melt in the night. Echoes fade out of sight. Moonlight bathes the world in fright. Ticking cloisters on crumbling walls, telling tales of forbidden calls into the night.